Ambassador, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, absolutely, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Tourism in your country is booming. $1.27 billion just in the first quarter of this year, and it looks like that's only the beginning. People are drawn to your gorgeous beaches and your green spaces. Are there any concerns at all, or is it full steam ahead for your tourism industry?
Well, tourism is of critical importance to Jamaica's development prospects. We have we have been blessed with a beautiful country, with a people who are warm and hospitable, and if I may say, vibesy. And so the ability to use this industry as a tool for our development is something that the government has embraced. Just last year, Jamaica led the process towards the commemoration of February 17 as Global Tourism Resilience Day. Because the COVID-19 experience taught us that the global tourism industry is subject to shocks. The pandemic was a shock. It's also subject to political shocks, to economic shocks, to natural disaster shocks. And so because it is so intertwined, and because it's such a conduit for relationships with other states, with other cultures, with other peoples, it is important for us to have a healthy global economy, one that can withstand these shocks. And so, in short answer to your question, yes, it is full steam ahead. We are pressing for greater investment in our tourism industry in a way that protects and preserves not just the environment, but the capacity of our own people to enjoy the bounties of our country.
What were some of those lessons learned post-pandemic that you would want to share with countries that are also trying to build their tourism industry?
Well, the lesson is that you can't wait to make these investments. Because if we are constantly in the waiting game to earn enough to be able to invest, then you will always be behind, and your people will get left behind when there is an exogenous shock like the pandemic. And so finding the wherewithal to be able to prioritize investments in health and in education, which were exposed dramatically during the pandemic, is critical. It's one of the reasons why another one of our priorities as a country and as a government is to press for appropriate financing for development so that those fiscal gaps can be closed and that fiscal space can open up for us to be able to invest in these areas.
Experts are already saying that this year's Atlantic hurricane season will be very active. Is Jamaica ready?
At the end of April this year, I saw the National Meteorological Service in Jamaica announce that they were watching a system that had formed off the coast of Africa, which is where our hurricanes develop from. So it's at the end of April. Our hurricane season starts in June. So to have these kinds of warning signals emanating from so early really does require the kind of response to prepare. We've been told that this is going to be a very active hurricane season. And so, as much as one can prepare for the worst is what we are doing. But the goal of reducing the intensity of hurricanes, reducing the impact of climate change is ultimately what is going to save us. In the meantime, we have to build our resilience. We have to adapt. That also requires the means to do that. Jamaica has been smart, been sensible in taking an approach to building the resilience, but also to preparing for the worst. So we are doing whatever we can. We call on the international community to redouble its efforts, to stand up to the commitments under the Paris Agreement, to make sure that the world is doing what it needs to do to keep to 1.5 and to protect and preserve against sea level rise, warming of the oceans, and the other climate challenges that we face.
Surely you've noticed changes over the years in your country.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I come from a part of Jamaica called Negril, which is on the west end of the island, a tourist resort. And we've seen the shrinking of the coastline. we've seen our beaches literally disappearing before our eyes. Thankfully, they're not gone yet, and we still have 7 miles of beautiful white sand beach left, but we can see the impact. It is an imperative for us to be very firm and loud advocates to those who don't experience it in the same way, to ensure that action is taken, and that countries like ours, small island developing states like Jamaica, are adequately prepared and provided for in the event of a catastrophic disaster.
China and Jamaica celebrating 50 years of ties. Foreign Minister Wang Yi paid a visit to your country at the beginning of the year. How would you describe this relationship?
Jamaica has a very productive and very friendly relationship with China. We recognized the People's Republic of China in 1972. So 50 years in 2022, we celebrated. And it's been a relationship of mutual respect and trust and support for many, many years. So we enjoy very strong bilateral relations with China. We have an embassy in China, as China does in Jamaica. China has been a good development partner for Jamaica, the Belt and Roads Initiative. There are a lot of infrastructure agreements that we have together that are underway, including the development of our own new Ministry of Foreign Affairs, which China has assisted greatly with. There are collaborations in the field of health, with infrastructure development in the health sector as well. So the relationship between our two countries has been fruitful. It's growing. We hope it continues to grow. It's always good to welcome foreign ministers and indeed heads of government and state of friendly countries to Jamaica. So Jamaica was pleased to welcome Minister Wang Yi earlier this year, and we look forward to continued strengthening of the relationship with China.
Ambassador Brian Wallace, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.